it matches what my goal is. And that is to basically treat every mother and baby and whoever she comes with, whether it's her mother, mother-in-law, husband, partner, as if I would want someone to treat myself.
Hello everyone, Mike Green here with another episode of High Performance Humans, the show where you can learn from top performers how they got to where they are today, as well as their tips, tools, and strategies for success. Now today, for this episode, I had the opportunity to talk to Lori Isenstadt. She's a small business owner, and she's a really bright gal that I've had the opportunity to work with in some of my mastermind groups. So the reason why I invited Lori on is because I really value her skill as a communicator and her ability to relate and really connect with people, which I think can't be overstated how that is important. So she talks a lot about ways of improving your empathy, communicating better, and really a whole slew of things that can really step up your game. And without further ado, here's Lori. Hello everyone, I am Mike Green, and today I get the pleasure of speaking with Lori Isenstadt. Lori, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. I'm thrilled to be here with you.
Awesome. So let's just go ahead and dive right into it. You've met somebody for the first time and they're interested in what you do. What do you tell them?
Well, my business life often overlaps with my personal life, so I usually begin by saying I'm a wife and a mother of 3 adult children. And in business, I am a lactation consultant, which means I help moms with breastfeeding, and that includes education, support, and advocacy.
Is it a lactation consultant, you said?
Yes. When I say lactation consultant, I usually get that deer in the headlights. So I very quickly go towards, I help moms who are having challenges with breastfeeding. And then it's like, oh, okay.
So is that within the context of a larger business? So do you work with hospitals, or is that something that you do independently?
I started my career as a lactation consultant working in 2 large Phoenix City hospitals. And I worked there for 7 to 8 years. And I also worked in a very large local breastfeeding clinic, seeing literally hundreds of moms a week. About 8 years ago, I transitioned and I opened my own private practice called All About Breastfeeding. So currently, while I might meet a mom and do a private visit in a hospital, I'm not employed by the hospital. I'm self-employed, and I see moms for lactation consults, meet with them for about an hour to an hour and a half, and they come to my home office or I come to their home for a consult.
So what was kind of the impetus or the starting point for that transition away from hospital to private practice?
The hospitals have budgets, have directors, and they ebb and flow. There's lots of red tape and lots of changeover. And every time there's a new budget, there's a new director, there are changes. Sometimes they take money away and sometimes they give it the money. So the hours go up and down, especially if you're a part-timer. So there were times when I was doing an 8-hour day, then a 6-hour day, then 7. Then in the last couple of years, it went to 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours. And literally one day I walked in and they said, okay, well, the budget for the next 3 months is only 1 hour. And I was like, I can't drive 45 minutes to do 1 hour of work to drive 45 minutes home. In addition to the job satisfaction just gets pretty poor. I loved working in the hospital. I loved working with other physicians and nurses, and I loved working with the mothers and babies. It just did not become practical. The clinic that I worked at, that was also a changeover, and some of the changes that were made were not to my satisfaction. And so I had a combination of both places at once, being in major transition with things that I was not thrilled about. I had thought about opening a private practice. There were many people who actually urged me to open a private practice. The impetus for that is once a mom leaves the hospital, there's little places for her to go to get follow-up help. And when mothers are in the hospital after birth, it's typically a 24 to 48-hour stay. And there's so much that goes on, and there's often just not enough time to do all the education. And a lot of the problems start on the 2nd and 3rd day after birth that start to rear their ugly head. And there's this huge gap and no place for them to go. I hesitated because I loved being in the hospital scene. I worked at the breastfeeding clinic where there was mothers who worked there who had small children who were actively breastfeeding. And I just loved being around the mothers and the babies and in that environment also. And I thought, if I open up a private practice, I'm seeing 2 or 3 mothers a day. I'm working out of my home. And selfishly enough, like, where's my social life? Who am I going to go to lunch with? Who am I going to interact with? And it sounds interesting, but I am spending an hour or so with each mother and baby. But in between consults at the breastfeeding clinic or in the hospital, I get to see all these other people and be somewhat social, even if it's in the hall. Hi, hey, how you doing? How was your weekend going? Mm-hmm. And of course, lunch with other people. So I was afraid to take that step, partly because I'm building a business and starting from scratch. And as equally so, I was just concerned how I would do in that environment that I was creating, which was seeing very few people a day. But at a certain point, push came to shove, and the things that were happening in the other part-time workplaces made it so that I finally said, okay, I'm just going to do this.
Well, sometimes you need a gentle shove to start something amazing. So for those first months or years, where did the initial clients come from? Or I guess they'd be clients, right?
Yes, mommy clients, yes.
Mommy clients. Where did the initial mommy clients come from? Were they people that you were working with already, or referrals, or what did that look like for you?
A variety of places. I did start off with a email campaign, with a postcard, regular snail mail campaign. I also have friends in the business, other lactation consultants who worked in the hospitals, some who worked at WIC clinics and other breastfeeding clinics, and they were a nice size portion of my referrals. I slowly got to know the physicians and OBs and midwives. It's not that I didn't know them before, but they had not seen or needed me in that capacity. And so to get the word out that they now had someone that they could send on the outside after a mom had her baby. So that gradually began to build. And the reality is that by and large, what's really worked the best overall, hands down, is mother-to-mother referrals. So it's not necessarily physicians or OBs and midwives. It's not necessarily any advertising that I was doing. I actually only advertised that first year, and the response was very, very poor. And I thought, I have this coupon that's going to give a certain discount. And I never met anybody who came in with a coupon. So I just put that aside. About a year into it, I got a really cool graphic on the back of my car window. And so it took up the whole window. So that was my main form and only form of advertising since the second year on. And I paid for that once, and it kept going for X amount of years. So I really have relied on mother to mother, and that is actually the best way to go, because frequently moms will say, yeah, my doctor told me about you. I saw your name on a handout in the hospital literature. But then my friend Mary and Susan also, when I told them who I was thinking about going to, or I asked them, your name came up, and by the third or fourth time, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to her. So that familiarity and having someone else go to, because the other thing is that I'm either invited into their home, a stranger, or they're coming to my home office, a strange home. And so the degree of familiarity from that point, in addition to you're basically sitting in a room and baring your breasts and being intimate with another person about personal, medical, emotional issues. So that familiarity has helped tremendously, and it is probably, so my business is probably about 70% mother-to-mother referrals.
Oh, wow. That seems to bring up a hallmark of treating people well if you have that level of referral, that level of positive referral, I guess. On the converse side, if they didn't like their experience, they could say, oh, no, stay away from them. So how do you treat people so well that they're comfortable in recommending something that's so, I guess, as you said, intimate?
Well, based on the feedback that I have been given, it matches what my goal is. And that is to basically treat every mother and baby and whoever she comes with, whether it's her mother, mother-in-law, husband, partner, as if I would want someone to treat myself. So when I go in for a medical appointment, I want to be treated as if I'm the only person that counts at that moment. I want to be treated as if they know me, so they at least looked at my name ahead of time and can call me by name. You know how you go to appointments and they're flipping the chart and saying, okay, so Michael Green. Hi, how are you doing? Nice to see you again. And you know that they just don't remember. So doing a little bit of homework ahead of time, making sure I know their name, the baby's name, etc., and treating them as if I would want to be treated. So I'm sitting down, I'm talking, eye contact, answering all the questions, following through at different points during the meeting. Are you comfortable? Is everything I'm doing okay? Do you have any questions up to this point? And at the end, do you have any other questions? Anything else that came up? If you don't have anything else that came up now, surely you're going to have some questions driving home or tonight. You have my email. So you really give that really good one-on-one attention while that person is in the room, and you try your absolute best, even if in your mind you know you're running late and your schedule is off, to not let that come into the room. Because when I'm on that other side of the desk, and when someone has their hand on the door, they're looking at the clock, at the watch, at their cell phone, etc., I'm already feeling that I'm feeling rushed. I'm feeling like they're not paying attention to me. And therefore, I feel like I'm not being well taken care of. So my goal is to treat every person who I see as if I would want to be treated.
That's an excellent way to go about it, and something that I think most, if not all, businesses should really strive for. Is there any either tools or tactics or strategies you use to keep all of those different people straight? Because over time, you probably have met and worked with no small number of people. Is there anything that you use to help you with keeping up that high degree and high quality of bedside manner? Or do you just have an incredible memory?
I do not have an incredible memory. What I try to do ahead of time is make sure I have a chart, and I make sure that I'm looking at it. I actually look at the chart throughout the consult time, on and off, because I do have to take notes. But when I take notes, I do my best to also look at them. But when I'm doing that, on that page, I don't have pages and pages. On that page is their name and the baby's name. And for the most part, this is the most important thing to a mother, even more than her name, is that you remember her baby's name, and that you know that the Jessie is a boy or a girl. Those are things that really get mothers. If you should say, Jessie, oh, she's so cute, and Jessie is a boy. First-time mothers, we are so crazy sensitive. Second-time moms are like, that's okay. You get it all the time. They have a thick skin. But when you see a newly postpartum mother with her baby at 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, and you refer to them as the opposite sex, big no-no for most moms.
All right. So if you're out there and working with new mothers, I hope you're taking notes here, because Lori is laying it down for you, because she is talking to these people on a daily basis. So any other trigger points or anything like that that people should know about for new moms when working with them?
Here's what I think I do best is really remembering what it was like for me when I was postpartum. And it is a long time ago, so it's hard to keep those memories fresh, but I work hard at it. And one of the things that helps is to really sit and listen to each mother's story. And some of the births are traumatic. Some, the early breastfeeding is traumatic. And I can always see and feel myself almost in her spot all those years ago. And I think when you lose the ability to really put yourself in that position, it tends to be more business and less personal. And I need to be a lot more personal and less business. And so by really recognizing and knowing and being able to relate to what they're going through, I like to tell my own story sometimes when it's appropriate. I don't want to take up a lot of time doing it, but sometimes a 2 to 4 or 5 minute story relaxes a mother. She now knows exactly that you know exactly what she's feeling like, and that can change the whole energy in the room. So those are things that I do really best, is the personal communication style that I have of making people feel comfortable. In particular, the dads or the partners in my very early days, when the partner was just sitting there with their arms folded and sitting back and they didn't talk much, I'd be like, I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what they're saying. And then the brain always goes to a negative space. And I've learned that sometimes people are just that way. I've also learned to do what I can in the very beginning to bring them a little bit out of their shell, say at least a few things to me so I kind of get where they're coming from, because the fears on my part is like, they're not happy to be there. They don't want to be there. Their wives or partners are paying all this money and they don't think it's money well worth spent. So if I can get them talking a little bit about it, not just that, either about themselves or the problem, or how they're feeling about their partner who is struggling with breastfeeding challenges. It's amazing how quickly that changes the energy in the room, and they're just more open. Even if they're quiet or silent, it's not that sitting back, arms folded, like, show me that you're worth it kind of a thing. It becomes, okay, this is someone who's going to help my wife. And that helps tremendously because I need for the partner, whoever they are, if they're home with the mom, to be able to be listening to what I'm saying, because they're going to be very valuable piece to what happens when they go home and the follow-up. So I encourage them to come with someone else who's going to be spending time with them postpartum, who can help them remember all the things we said and did.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. And so from what you're telling me and what we've talked about so far, it sounds like you're very good at empathy, really, which is an excellent skill to have, being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes, so to speak. Is that something you've always been able to do well, or is it something that you've curated over time?
It's definitely a learned, acquired skill.
Oh, okay.
My joke about that is I come from a family of 5, and I'm the middle child, and you had to fight to get your word in edgewise. So when I had my first baby, 6 months into it, I joined a mother's group. That was a formal group as far as how it was run, but at the same time, it was informal, and they had rules. And I was like, you have rules? Like, I just want to sit and talk. And at the beginning of every group, they would talk about their rules. And a couple of them were to speak from the eye, so to tell my story. So for me not to say my neighbor, what she did with her breastfeeding relationship with her baby. No, I'm talking about this is what happened with me. So you're not telling someone else's story, you're telling your own. And in doing that, you are really sharing your own intimate details, which allows other people to feel comfortable with you when they want to share their intimate details. So if you're always talking about someone else, or if you're always saying everything in your life is great and wonderful, you're part of a group, but you kind of put a chokehold on people because they're not going to want to share if everything in your life is so great, or you're just telling other people's stories. So speaking from the eye was one, being non-judgmental was another, and also allowing someone to be silent if they wanted to be silent for a minute or two and think about a question, maybe take a pass, and also to not talk over someone, so to let people take turns. And that was not something I was good at. So they would read these things, and this is how, like, sometimes the worst offenders were like, of course, of course, of course. And then you realize that you're one of those worst offenders. So after about a year, I realized that I am about 100% better than what I was when I first joined this mother's group, but I still have a long way to go. And I was a group member for a very long time, and then I received facilitator training, which was an additional huge help to how I communicated. And that was really a big deal for me and made a lot of changes. I walked away from that experience. I shouldn't say walked away, but about 10 years later, I realized, boy, there's always so much to learn. But when I realized what a bad group member I was initially and how much I've grown, I've done so much work in that. So a lot of the things in my life, I bring them to the next level of whatever I'm doing. So by the time I became a lactation consultant, I had years of now speaking in front of groups, being with people one-on-one in large groups, facilitating small groups, facilitating large groups, learning how to be empathetic while still communicating, that skill of making sure everybody felt like you were just with them and your mind wasn't 100 other places. So everything I've done, I really paid close attention to all the things that I've learned before then and brought that into whatever next venture I was doing. And by the time I opened up my private practice, I felt that I had learned so much. Even then, I still took a member of Toastmasters, and I still continue to do things because there's always so much to learn and to grow. But that's where I keep saying, boy, have I grown, and I'm so much better than I ever was. But it definitely is an acquired skill when you have to keep working at on a daily basis. It certainly comes easier the more you do it, but it's definitely been an acquired skill. I did not start off as a kind, caring, empathetic person who communicated well and let someone else speak before I spoke. That was a biggie for me.
That's huge, and it's something I think that many people, including myself, have challenges with, because sometimes, depending on what your earlier environments were or even your environments later in life, it influences heavily how you can communicate and how you can relate to people. So for the people listening, Lori just gave you a fantastic blueprint for how to go about proving not only your ability to empathize with people, but the ability to clearly communicate with them, which is key not only to business, but just personal wealth, building those relationships that you can value over time. So I really appreciate diving into that. And one thing that I did want to touch on, is there maybe one or two quick takeaways that you could share from the facilitator training? Was there any standouts from that moment, or was it just more opportunity to practice?
There was a standout every Monday between 12:30 and 1:30 when we met, and see how I remember the days even all these years later. It was so important to me, because I was able to take in new information that I could bring into the groups I facilitated. In addition to, there was typically aha moments for myself personally in my own life. That was very helpful to me as a wife, as a mother, as a daughter, that I learned things like this light bulb will go off and I'd say, you know what, that is very important to do in a group, but I could probably also do that with my mother too, and I'm really pissed off at her.
So relate the learnings back to not only the current hat that you're wearing, but your own personal life, because I think that's where a lot of the implementation or the learning fails for people, is they look at these things like, oh, okay, I see how that's immediately applicable to my business, for example. I see that I need to spend money doing this for X reason, but they don't look at the more holistic picture. So if you really want to learn something, you need to figure out how to apply it to your life all around. When applicable, not everything's going to touch every piece of your life, I suppose.
Exactly. Well, like, for example, we were very big on not being judgmental, because in the mommy world, it's very common for one mother to judge the next mother about how she's raising her child, what she's feeding her baby, how she disciplines her child. So one of the things I learned was, in my head, when someone said something, to not quickly jump in my head about what I thought about it, was to let her finish whatever it was she was saying, because if she finished or explained herself, more often than not, I walked away with a very different opinion than when I had gone with my very first thought process about whatever it was she said she was doing with her child.
Wow, that's an incredible impulse to overcome too, because that's something that's deeply programmed in people, so to speak, for thousands of years, just through the survival bias that we have.
Yes. So to translate that like into a personal life, I could probably do husband thing, but I'll do it like a mother thing.
It's a little bit safer, huh?
Yes. Well, my mother thing might be she's telling me something else about one of my siblings or something, or the holidays are coming up or something. And I'm like, what do you mean she's going to XYZ? And it's taught me to just really ask, well, why is that happening? And how do you think about that? To actually relate to her in a way that I would be relating to someone else in a group situation. And so those are my takeaways, to realize I'm not doing this just for the women in the group. I'm doing it so that I could continue to learn myself. And the aha moment is like, oh, Lori, take this with you in your regular life, in your relationships with the people surrounding you that you see most of the time. And then, of course, that can extend outward. But the big deal was, don't just keep the learning in this group as a facilitator. Bring it to your close and extended family members and friends when you're relating to them. And those were like some of the big aha moments, because you get focused and you're like, oh, I'm here as a facilitator and I'm trying to do a good job with the moms here in the group. Boom. But then you start to realize you can use those skills in various parts of your life. And even with my kids, after a while, my husband would say, you got that from Mother Center, didn't you? And my kids, as they're older now, they bring up very specific things sometimes. And they're like, I'm sure you learned that in your mother's group.
You're like, maybe so, but aren't you glad that I did? It could have been much skewed the other direction. So.
Well, that's my joke. It's like, you would not have wanted the mother that I was when I first started out for your young lifetime. You're lucky I grew and changed and learned.
That can be said for all of us. So I love that, and I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I can't emphasize how important those lessons are that you shared with us. And thank you for giving a good outline for ways that people can improve through joining groups, to going to the facilitator training, to even Toastmasters, and some other ideas that you threw at us. But We're going to do a quick pivot here and learn a little bit more about you. So what are you doing right now that you're really excited about?
I am currently continue to working in my All About Breastfeeding business, my private practice, where I continue to see moms on a private basis, one-on-one, helping them with breastfeeding challenges. My day-to-day work for many years has been to support breastfeeding moms through education and advocacy. I am starting a podcast. It just launched the other day called All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out.
I love that tagline, by the way. Congratulations.
Thank you. I got a couple of feedback over the weekend, and one of the guys who listened to the show and said, it's great, and I think we need more of this, and gave some really good compliments and some words of encouragement. About 5 hours later, he sent me another little text, and it said, guess what? I just got the tagline. Ha, ha, ha.
Well, it's such a great way to disarm people maybe a little bit about a topic that they may or may not be so comfortable learning about. So lead in with a joke on a challenging topic, and it's not terribly challenging, but everybody has a different personal comfort level. I love that so much. So anyway, sorry to cut in there, but that just makes me laugh every time I see that in a positive way.
Yeah. Well, it's good because when I put it out there, there was very few people who were offended by it, and most people just had a belly laugh. So I knew I was on the right track. And I didn't start out with it for this particular reason, but the reality is it matches my personality. And so whatever I'm doing in business, you want whatever you're connected with to match your personality. And so in private consults, there are things that happen that are funny, and I frequently laugh, and the mom laughs, and it's like we're laughing with each other. I'm not laughing at you, and they get it. So we just have to have a sense of humor in many things in life, and specifically with breastfeeding moms, they really do, and their partners, they just have to have a sense of humor. So to start off just giving my name, All About Breastfeeding, the place where the girls hang out, already sets the tone. So I really like that, and feedback has been great. I just launched the podcast, and we're up and running, so I'm very, very excited about that. And it really complements the day work that I do, because I continue to support, educate, and advocate for breastfeeding moms. And I want so much to normalize breastfeeding, for it to be a fabric of everyday life. That's my goal with the podcast.
Awesome. So everybody listening, you should check it out, especially if you're interested in that specific topic. We'll have some links to that in the show notes for sure. One other thing I might say is, okay, so maybe you don't have a child or they're well past the age of breastfeeding. At least listen to a few of them to hear how Lori interviews and interacts with her guests and see how she's exercising that well-developed sense of empathy and communication that we were talking about earlier. Maybe you're like me and you need, or at least you learn better from examples. Check it out, see it in practice. It'll be time well spent. And certainly if you're interested in the topic for more practical reasons or more immediately applicable reasons, take a look too, because from the sounds of it, Lori is truly an expert in her field. So again, we'll have a link to that in the show notes. Let's find out a little bit more about you. Do you have a role model or somebody that you've looked up to?
I have over the years, and it's changed from time to time depending upon what I have been doing. And before I even mention people that I don't know that well, I always truly, truly do love to mention my mother, because my mommy is my role model. She raised 5 kids. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she has really taught me what being patient and being there for others and family first is really all about. Tons of more stuff, but those are the biggest things that I've learned from her, to really take care of your family first, and then everything else extends from that. And someone else, that might not be important for them, but for those of us that it is, we need to have a role model in showing us how to do that. For me, that is important. So to have her for a role model, her and my father were both unconditional love and will do anything for you. And that's the kind of parent that I've strived to be. In business, I've had several really excellent mentors who are role models. Some of them are actually retired now. Currently in the podcasting world, which is a new world for me, I'm really following and watching several female podcasters who have been role models for me. Jessica Rhodes on Roads to Success. She has a fabulous podcast, so I've been listening to her. Natalie Ekdahl from BizChicks. and two ladies, Jessica and Elsie, from a podcast, She Podcast. And what they bring to the table for me is some are more formal and businesslike. Some are more active and entertaining and informal, but still getting the business done. Some are more organized than the next and pay attention to different various aspects of business that I need to, marketing and advertising. So in the world of podcasting, I'm really finding it helpful to seek out role models from various shows that can give me a variety of help, basically.
Absolutely, and it's so helpful sometimes to see, especially when you're putting your toe in a new world, or in your case, jumping right in, some examples or some people to emulate until you find your own center there. So I've listened to, I think, 4 of the 4, actually, because I'm on the email list for She Podcast, oddly enough. I'm not sure how I ended up on that, but I enjoy reading it anyway and occasionally listen in. So all of them are great people to listen to and to learn from. We'll put those in the show notes as well.
One of the things that I really enjoying from them that kept me continuing to learn from them is not just saying you need to be yourself, you need to be yourself, but they truly are emulating that. They are themselves. Their personality is there. I could tell that they are not trying to be someone else. They also have learned from other people in the field, but perhaps at least by the time I found them, they are being themselves. And ultimately, I think that's what we all really need to do. We can learn and bring it into our business, whether it's private consults like I'm doing, whatever business other people do. For me right now, I'm referring to the podcast. But ultimately, you just can't have that staying power as far as keeping yourself in that place if you're working so hard to be like someone else. It's just too hard to keep up all the time. And eventually, you're going to start falling down, and then you will have to be yourself.
Right.
Because I think it's just, I don't know how you feel, but it would be very, very hard for me to maintain being like someone else. It's like triple the work.
Sure. It's one of those things, I think, as silly as it sounds, everybody's like, oh yeah, I'll just be myself behind the mic or in front of a camera. I think it's definitely a cultivated skill. Yeah, there's a few people that take to it immediately, but for most people, as soon as you get that microphone in your mouth, or not in your mouth, hopefully, but near your mouth, or that camera in your face, you still put on that different hat or that different mask that you wear when you're public self, and that just really doesn't cut it long term. I'm with you on that, where yeah, maybe it's a curtailed version of self because you want to make sure that you're focused on delivering value for the people that are listening or entertaining them or whatever the case may be. But certainly you need to be at the core you, because otherwise it isn't going to cut it. It's going to fall flat and people are not going to be caring about you, your guests, or anything like that. So I think it's very wise what you're saying there. But to do an awkward transition, I guess, I was going to say, if funding, staff, technology, and feasibility were not an issue, what is one question you would want to answer?
This truly has nothing to do with business, but more about life. Also has something, I'm going to preface it by saying it's not something I think about all the time or much at all.
Sure.
However, this burning question in my mind has always been, I would love to really, once and for sure, know what actually happens at the moment of death. Mm-hmm. And what happens afterwards. And for me, the question about the moment of death, does anybody feel any pain or suffering at the moment of death? With all the technology and all the science and all the research, I don't think we'll ever know that until our time comes. But you asked, so I answered.
No, and that's what I love about this question is it doesn't have to be a burning question that's plaguing you or in your mind 24/7, but I think it's interesting to see mindset, and sometimes you get some goofy answers, sometimes some very serious answers. So I like it because it gives people the opportunity to really share some of their thoughts that sometimes they don't have that opportunity to do so. So working as designed, and thank you for sharing that with us because I know sometimes it's not always comfortable to do so. Let's shift the focus a little bit. What's one thing that the people that are currently listening can do for you?
If you know of anybody who is breastfeeding, going to be breastfeeding, parents of possible breastfeeding ladies. What I really want to do, again, with my podcast is to normalize breastfeeding. So I recognize that a bulk of the people who will be tuning into the show for the first time and continuing to listen to it are women who are actively breastfeeding or going to be breastfeeding or had been and still have a great interest in the subject. In my mission to normalize breastfeeding, boy to boy, do I really wish that some people could turn over the show, play it, put it on someone's iTunes on their computer and just say, hey, spend a half hour, an hour just listening to this. Because the deal with normalizing breastfeeding is that it's so slow, just one woman at a time. And that's how some of the advertisements go. But what we really need is for the people who are not breastfeeding, who have no clue about breastfeeding, who may be the ones who are more judgmental about seeing a mom breastfeeding in public per se. Actually, they don't necessarily need education on how to breastfeed, but they do need education on why a mom might, which is very big in our country now, which is a really crazy thing to have to deal with, but mothers getting kicked out of places when they're breastfeeding. And a big part of it is that people who are doing it, who are judging it, largely I find when I get into conversations, they just don't understand why it's important. So to understand it is what's really going to help make changes. Of course, I don't expect people who are not in this breastfeeding world to perhaps stay the course long term, but I sure would love it if they were able to take what they've learned, share it with some other people. There are, for example, store owners who just don't understand. There are still businesses. There are bosses and supervisors who just don't understand why women pump at work. There are people who don't understand why a mom might sit in the mall and breastfeed her baby. They think if she has to feed her baby, then just don't come out of the house. And the problem is they don't realize, especially with newborns, they're feeding every couple of hours. A mother would never get anywhere. She'd be very isolated. And that leads to postpartum depression. And that actually happens a lot because women have fears about going out in public. They also don't understand why a mom might need to pump after 3 or 4 hours. They don't understand that these mammary glands, they fill up with milk, they get engorged, and actually are very, very painful if you don't remove the milk. And that's just a couple of examples. People say, why doesn't she just give her baby a bottle if she's in public? Well, if a baby's been exclusively breastfed for thousands of feedings, they don't all of a sudden go from breastfeeding to taking a bottle. It's like someone feeding with a fork all their life and then giving them chopsticks. It just doesn't work. So, I mean, that's my sense of humor coming in about it all, but I just wanted to get the point across that it is a show largely for moms who are in the breastfeeding world, but it also can be a source of education for other people that I think would really be helpful, which would really further the goal of normalizing breastfeeding. So my goal is that nobody is ever kicked out of anywhere for breastfeeding their baby, and nobody is telling moms, are you still breastfeeding? And if I could do those things from the podcast, I am good to go.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge accomplishment. So like Lori's asking, go ahead and check it out. And like I said, it doesn't necessarily need to be just for those that are either breastfeeding or their partners. It can be an eye-opening thing for many people for the reasons that we've mentioned already. So what's the best way for people to connect with you?
I have a couple of places. aabreastfeeding.com is where you can learn about my private practice. There's lots of good information there. There's some free resources for you to check out, lots of education there, and how to get in touch with me for a private consult. I also have Skype consults available for moms before they have their baby. There's lots of moms who have questions about breastfeeding before the birth. And you can also check out allaboutbreastfeeding.biz, which gives you information about the podcast. Actually, you can go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/podcast, and you can find out information about the podcast. I have great guests on the show, more upcoming, and very excited about it. And it's a lot of fun, it's educational, and it's heartwarming. And if you go on either of those sites, you will easily be able to find links to Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn accounts too.
Awesome. So we'll make sure to put those in the show notes. So if you're driving, please continue driving and don't pause to take a note. They'll be in the show notes. So thank you so much for joining us today, Lori. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
I'm very excited that you asked me, and I had a great time with you. Thanks so much, Michael. This is Lori J Isenstadt saying thank you for watching today's show. And if you like the show and want to make sure you don't miss another one, just press that subscribe button below. And also, anybody who knows me knows that my mantra is, don't let All About Breastfeeding be your best kept secret. Please like the button below and share this show with every pregnant and new mother that you know that may be interested in anything related to breastfeeding. You can also go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz, and there you will find lots more information about myself, the services that I provide, and you will also get the whole library, all free of all the shows, the 120 guests that I've interviewed about all subjects related to breastfeeding. That's at allaboutbreastfeeding.biz. And the last thing is my gift to you. If you go to allaboutbreastfeeding.biz/7secrets, you will get my handout on the 7 secrets to breast pumping. See you on the next show.